All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to get started on the temporary basement kitchen project. If you caught the last video, you know all about it already thanks to the HR segment. Hey, what are you doing? But if you missed that one, well, go check it out. But just to catch you all up, this project is going to be a temporary kitchen, like I said, because we are going to completely gut and remodel the upstairs, which means, well, that's out of commission. We need someplace to wash our dishes. The weather's going to get nice enough that we'll do all our cooking out on, grilling type stuff outside, but we have to be able to wash dishes still. And this is the old fish cleaning station that was here when we moved into the house. Not really good enough for a family to wash all of their dishes in for 2 to 3 months, depending on how long this takes me to do this. So this is what the basement looks like right now. Have a quick little tour. That's the fish cleaning station. We had water that was coming down over the top and into the sink, but I've already capped that off so I can get started on this. Over here, over this floor drain, we actually had almost like a shower, but it was too short for a human to use, so I had a little length of hose hooked up to it, and I would wash the dogs over that floor drain. But otherwise, we have like old, ugly outlets hanging there. That one is another more modern, but still old and ugly outlet hanging there. It's just not really quite right. And then you can see all the way across there is that pink foam board insulation. And even when we bought the house, the inspector said, that's not right. You can't just have that exposed like that. So what we're gonna do is, here's the firewood area back here. This is the first sheet of what we're gonna do here. That was old, this is new. I put this one up just sort of prove the concept. We're just gonna put OSB sheeting across the front of this all the way down and drill tap cons straight through it into the cinder block foundation on the outside, and that'll hold the wall up. And then when we come back over here, starting just to the side of the dog shower, we're gonna actually put like plastic paneling back over the top of that again and waterproof about 16 feet, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4 panels. That sounds like 16 feet to me. So we'll have a 4x8 sheet of like basically shower material, what you would build a quickie shower out of. Stick that into the wall and waterproof that whole back wall so that for kitchen and dog bath and future purposes, that'll all be nice. The other thing that I'm gonna do is when we gut the upstairs, I'm gonna take the dishwasher out of that and put it down here temporarily. I think I'll just drain it straight into that floor drain and that should be good enough, but that should at least help make this process a little bit easier while we are without a real kitchen. If it works, I might keep that dishwasher down here permanently for some of my bigger grilling stuff, some of my dehydrator screens, my smokehouse, that kind of stuff. That doesn't really fit in a regular dishwasher, so I could take the top rack out of the old dishwasher and have it down here permanently for large items like that. But that's worrying about the future. For now, like I said, we pulled the plumbing away from the wall because it was pressed up against this. It's pretty hard to slide a sheet of OSB behind it when it's pressed up against that. So what we're gonna do right now is I have the whole sheet of this OSB outside. I put the first one up to kind of get the spacing right. There are 9 tap cons, 9 screws holding this to that cinder block wall right there. It's not quite a full 8 feet from top to bottom. I think it's 91 inches instead of 96 inches. So I'm gonna go out to my pile, cut them all down, and try to drill all of the holes all at once so that it's all pre-done and ready to go. That way I can just backbreakingly lug all of the sheets down here, stand them up, run a drill bit through it, and be done with it. The other thing that was interesting to note before I got this started, I just checked with my father-in-law. He's a construction worker. He's been doing this his whole life. I said, is this an appropriate way to do this? Because this is just glued to the cinder block. So there's nothing really holding this here other than glue. And I've got to get this more structurally sound than just gluing it to this, something like that. He said, yep, all that's fine. Tap cons straight into the cinder block. That's a good way to do it. What he suggested was not going about any lower than, that's my lowest one right there, about waist high. So don't get too close to the ground because cinder blocks are notorious for holding moisture in it. You could actually have some standing water in the cavities inside of a cinder block. And if you get down too low where that water might have actually pooled, you'd punch a hole in it and then have water coming in as it drains into the house. And I don't want that. So we've got 9 screws from about 8 foot to 5 foot to 3 foot, and then we aren't going to do anything below that. And There, I've rambled enough. Let's get to work. All right, I think it's time for a bit of a progress report. We have that whole wall is painted white, and then we have 4 panels, 16 feet or so of this fiberglass reinforced plastic. It's not necessarily just to make it waterproof, but just make it easy to clean. A wet rag is going to be all it takes to clean dust and filth and whatever off of that. If you take a look with the tape here, you got an outlet box that's going to go in there. And it's going to come up and over and down and hit that box, and it's going to go down here underneath where the sink will be. That'll be power for the dishwasher. The piece of tape there is showing where the counter is essentially going to be, and then we're going to take the fridge and the freezer and put them next to the counter and moving that way, and then that whole wall will end up being storage. So outlet, I'm going to put another outlet. Blue tape is indicating outlets. This one is original, like this is old-timey, 1,000-year-old wire. And then this was something somebody added at one point. We're going to undo both of those. We're going to get those off of that wall, and then we're just going to have this one circuit that goes across the whole length. These will get removed from the circuits that they're on, and we're going to have a little less issue with tripping breakers thanks to that. It's very, very weird. There's an outlet back in this corner. It's the only outlet on an entire circuit. There's another one over in kind of our home gym area that is the only outlet on an entire circuit. But then the top floor of this house is something like 15 outlets, and all of the lights on the entire floor are on one circuit. This stuff is really nice. I'm really happy with this. We get down here close, like slick and smooth and easy to clean, and that's going to be great. We will end up with new water coming here to a low shower. Basically, it's going to be a faucet with a hose always hung on it, so I can wash critters like this one right there, right, Flint? You love baths. And then we're going to have water. This is where I've disconnected it already. There's a cap and there's a cap, and that's going to come down here to the new sink, and the new sink will get plugged in right about here. And then that drain will have a T off of it so that the dishwasher can drain directly into that instead of having another hose laying on the floor over here. I don't think as long as we're cutting this apart, we're going to do it kind of sealed up right. And then the really big sink will go right there. So right now, I need to get outside, and I'm going to work on building the framework for this. That's all really going to be 2x4s. And yeah, moving on. All right, guys, it's time for a little bit of an update. You saw we were kind of building out the counter, and that's because everything in the basement is all ready. It just needs a counter to move along with. And we are going to do an epoxy pour on this one. It's a little bit silly going down in the basement like this, but we had enough left over from the last time we did this that this is a bit of a freebie. We're actually using it as a practice run because we're going to do the exact same thing in our kitchen later this spring, summer. And the first time we did this was in our bathroom, and I'll leave a link to that so you can go watch the whole thing in more detail. But that was about the most stressful project that we've ever done. We were sure we screwed it up. Turned out fantastic. We love everything about it, but the tensions were really high, and we learned a lot that time. So this time around, I think we're gonna be a lot more relaxed and just sort of practice our way through this one so we're good at it for the next one, for the big kitchen counter. Anyway, Katie's over here mixing the stuff up right now. What's this about?
We're just doing whites and grays and sparklies and not as much black as we did upstairs.
Not as much black. That was the problem, is we did like 3 drops of black and the whole counter just looked black. So we ended up doubling up the amount of epoxy that we made to try to wipe out the black that we mixed in. So we're gonna be way more sparing about that because she wants a very light colored thing when we're done here. But it's kind of an all hands on deck situation when it starts going. So I'm not gonna keep talking. I'm going to probably set up a time lapse and you're just gonna have to enjoy that. Well, we finished the fancy new counter and it went way more smoothly than it did the first time. We knew what we were expecting. We knew how the process worked. We knew that it started out kind of looking ugly, and the more you futz with it, the better it gets, and that's exactly what happened here. So it's sitting right here. I keep looking at it. I'm going to put just a little bit of caulking down so that it kind of helps hold the counter down, but I imagine the weight of it's going to do most of the work. The one thing I am going to do is run a bead along the seam at the back. This way, if any water gets behind the counter, it can't get behind the wood too. And then I have 1, 2, 3 flat spots where I can run just a couple of screws up from the bottom to really make sure it's not going anywhere. And ready. This is the final install for this thing. So when I set this down, it's not coming back off. There we go. Mostly in the right place. There we go. I'm gonna square everything against this corner. I like it. So that's exactly where it's gonna go. Pushed up against the wall. And we're done. So that's it. I didn't quite get enough plumbing pieces to connect the sink to that. So we're not going to get the sink in just yet, but I am going to run the feed lines down here. So I have to drill a hole right here to get the feed lines below the table. And so we're going to screw this down so it can't move around on me at all, and then we'll drill those holes quick. Look how fancy this thing turns out. So knowing that this was down here and it wasn't super critical, we put a few of those black streaks in it just for some accents, just to see what we thought. So like this curved corner, I'm not a huge fan of that. I do kind of like this one, but I wish it followed the grain pattern of the gray stuff a little bit more. And maybe the double Y doesn't work very well, but like this one, really like that streak with the split on there. Same thing here. That should have been following the grain direction a little bit more. And this too. But if you look, this was also black, and that was added in pretty early on. But like this one and this one, this was added kind of like when it stopped dripping almost. We put this in very late. You can still see that it flowed a little bit, but I kind of like how sharp those are versus like this was in there really early. It looks great. Happy with it, especially for a basement countertop. But we definitely learned a few things about what we're going to do going forward when we do the kitchen itself. All right, guys, we're just about done here. All that's really left to do is to install the sink, get it hooked up to the drain and the supply lines, and that means also getting the faucet put in. This is actually one of the most exciting parts of this to me. Vever sent me this commercial style faucet. My first real job when I was 14, 15 years old, something like that, was working in a fancy kitchen, and I was the dishwasher, and we had giant stainless steel everything, and this pressure washing monster that would clean the paint off of an old car if you wanted to. And so I had Vever send me the equivalent of what I used 20 years ago, whatever. So it doesn't look like a whole lot right now because there's some assembly required, but it comes in this package right here. It's all put in place, and then the instructions kind of correspond to a picture with numbers on it, and we'll get all that figured out as we go. What I need to do right now is there is a spot in the back of my sink. It didn't come pre-drilled, but it came kind of marked for different sizes. So I need to take the faucet portion out and figure out which size. Actually, I don't need to do that. I was maybe going to show you that, but I don't have to. If I just take a tape measure, it's 8 inches on center. So then if I come over to these pre-drilled, pre-marked spots, it's pretty clear which ones I need to drill out. So we'll drill out some holes. So then my plan is to at least mount some of the stuff before I install the sink. That way I don't have to lay on my back and try to install it from the bottom up. I can just put it in place, mount the sink, and then I can finish building the rest of this out without having to be so uncomfortable. Thing, rubber gasket, washer nut. So the stems that poke through are now tightened down to the sink, and then the long hoses that connect to the incoming water are also tightened down, and I zip tied them up here to the drain so that they don't get in the way, because I ran just a skinny bead of caulking all the way around the whole thing to help keep things waterproof. When I set this in here and it sits down there, I don't want any water to be able to get underneath it and sit there and puddle or flow underneath for whatever reason. And I didn't want to run caulking around the outside of it because I thought that would be a little less attractive looking. So there's that bead of caulking all the way around this thing, and it should squish down on here, help hold this down also, but not be so much that it squishes out so we can see it. Let's see if I can set this in here without making a huge mess. Very nice. Very, very nice. All right, guys, so I wrapped up the plumbing down below. We've got the water coming in. That's hot, that's cold. I left them white PEX so that it was a little bit nicer against that wall. And then we've got colored stuff up above, so it's real obvious what's what. Hooked all that up, and then all the drain. I added just a little bit of extension here to get up to a T. This connects to the drain. This is an extension here. That is for the dishwasher that will come eventually when we gut the kitchen. The old dishwasher will come down and go right over here, and then it'll plug into that. And then this is an inline valve, so you don't have a pipe going out the roof of the house for the pipe to breathe. It just sort of breathes right here, and it works. So now it's time to finish installing the rest of the faucet. Okay, everything's hooked up, everything is ready to go. The drain is connected. I've dumped a bucket of water in here to see if the drain leaks, and the drain does not leak. I had to make one tweak to get it a little bit tighter. Missed one of the nuts, but all of the plumbing is hooked up. So now I'm going to turn the water on to the faucet. There goes the hot. Don't see anything leaking. There's the cold. Okay, looks like I have everything tightened up now. There's no leaks coming from anywhere. So now if this is both on full, that's really moving a lot of water. And a little bit comes out of there. You can see where they cross. There's a focus point right there, 7 or so inches from the end of that. Shut this off. There, I actually felt this pull up in my hand. Okay, that's quite a bit. I'm gonna change this again. Yeah, I could feel the pressure change. So this is very much like the sink that or the faucet that I used to have back in the day. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna turn that so that when it drips out of the hose, it goes back into the sink. All right, a few more things to button up and this project is done, but this faucet is exactly what I wanted. All right, guys, let's wrap this whole thing up. I think this video has probably gone on for a really long time. Let's just point out a last couple of things. Somewhere along the way, we decided to move the chest freezer and the fridge from this wall up alongside the sink. That's why I added a little bit extra electricity back there. And then this wall is going to become storage, kind of like this stuff over here. So that's going to come later because we have some old plumbing that goes out to the kitchen. So I'll redo the plumbing when I redo the kitchen. So this will become storage after that. I'm not going to build storage around all these pipes and then rip them out later. So we have nice, clean, all the way back to the corner. I'm going to get a little bit of storage back in here. Chest freezer, fridge. This fridge will go away when we redo the kitchen, and the current upstairs kitchen will come down and be in that position. This will go out to the barn, and I'll probably get rid of it. But for now, this is going to work just fine. The countertop turned out awesome. Really happy with that. We are now going to start kind of abusing it and see how durable this is. That way we can make a last-minute decision on what we want to do in the kitchen. If this comes apart real easy, then maybe we'll pivot a little bit. But I'm curious just how durable this is. Love the new faucet. I've wanted one of these ever since I worked in that kitchen. So big thanks to Vever for sending me that. If you want one of those, there's a link to that down in the description. It is fantastic. I like having the big deep sink. This is going to be good for some of my like grilling and wild game cooking stuff. I'm going to be able to do a lot bigger stuff in here. The kitchen upstairs, we're going to rip again, when we rip it all apart, fridge will come down here, dishwasher will come down here, and that'll get drained into that little spigot right there. So then I will actually have a downstairs dishwasher, and we'll use that during this whole renovation process. We'll actually have a dishwasher instead of having to wash everything by hand down here. That'll be nice. And then after the fact, when the new kitchen is done, I think I'm going to rip the top rack out of the old dishwasher and keep it down here, keep the whole thing down here, but that way I can fit much bigger items in it than it can fit in there now with that top rack in place. Coming back over, you know, dehumidifier is plugged in because you got to keep a little bit of moisture out of the basement. Right here, you can look again. I have miserable plumbing all over the place. This is what I had to tie in to get that up and running. This goes to an upstairs bathroom, shower, sink, stuff like that. All of that has kind of been getting built from the top down, new and fresh. And so when I do the kitchen, I'm going to rip everything out of here that's copper and redo it nice out of PEX. So this is just kind of a cobbled together mess for now, but it will be good. You can see right here, that one's blocked and that one's blocked. I'm going to tap back into that and put a dog shower right here. So that way I can still wash the dogs in their wintertime and it won't be too big of a deal. And we have white wall going out to the end there. And we decided to stop right here at this juncture because, like you saw at the very beginning, this was original, this is what was added. And we stack firewood out to almost that far when we start the winter. So now it's a lot brighter and cleaner, and I have power in this wall, and I have a good sink, I have good drainage, I have good electrical. So this is a huge upgrade from what we had, and I am afraid that was the last hurdle preventing me from starting the kitchen. So in the next 1 to 3 weeks, I would say I will be gutting that kitchen. It all depends on weather. As soon as we can confidently cook every meal out on the deck, that project will be going nuts. So next video you see, I'll probably be introducing that entire project. You'll see the before stuff, and you'll probably see the demolition in that one. But anyway, I am confident that this has become a very, very long video, and I'm sure you'd like to get back to your regularly scheduled lives. So thanks for watching. Check all the links down below, and we'll see you next time.